Hello and welcome to our Kirk Humanitarian sponsored symposium entitled What's Next for the MMS Movement? Resources for Implementing and Coordinating Action on MMS Programming. My name is Maddie Bajoria. I'm the Nutrition Integration Manager at Sight and Life. For those of you who are not familiar, Sight and Life is a global nutrition think tank supporting the introduction and scale up of MMS in more than 10 low and middle income countries. We do this by bringing technical expertise in demand creation, supply readiness, and policy change. We are extremely proud to be a knowledge partner to Kirk Humanitarian in curating the symposium today, where we have an absolutely stellar lineup of speakers. Our speakers from a variety of organizations, both global and national, will be presenting available tools and resources that can be used by large healthcare systems to facilitate initial introduction of MMS. Now, before we proceed with our session, I would like to draw your attention to two important resources at this virtual connected conference. Firstly, we have another Kirk humanitarian sponsored symposium focusing on the national perspectives on the MMS evidence base and policy landscape, which I would encourage all of you to watch. Secondly, we have an MMS topics page on the Connected Conference website where you can find information on all the other important sessions and resources. So now, without further ado, let's get started with our programming. First off, you will hear from Dr. Emily Smith. Emily is an epidemiologist and an assistant professor at the George Washington University Milken Institute of Public Health in Washington, D.C. Here, she focuses on generating, analyzing, and interpreting epidemiological data to improve maternal and newborn health and nutrition in low and middle income countries. Emily will share opening remarks on her perspective of the future of MMS and best practices. Over to you, Emily.
Hi, from Washington, D.C., and welcome to each of you who are calling in from around the world. I am thrilled to welcome you to today's session, where our group of illustrious speakers will share their vision for what's next for the MMS movement. If you were in the Track 4 live session a bit ago, you know that there have been nearly 3 decades of research that was conducted by hundreds of researchers in more than a dozen countries around the world that have led us to this moment today. Randomized trials, which provide the gold standard of evidence about what works, have included more than 100,000 women. That's a lot of evidence, and it clearly and consistently shows that MMS, or a comprehensive prenatal vitamin, can promote a positive pregnancy experience for all women. And it prevents babies from being born too soon or too small. It sets them on the right track for life. But in order to translate this evidence into action, to actually make a difference for women and their babies, we need to support country-led decisions to implement MMS during antenatal care. And how can we do that? Our goal today is to support you all in making that decision and to ensure that we learn from each other as we move forward. When we talk about the MMS movement, we're not talking only about changing commodities, switching from one iron and folate pill to a more comprehensive multivitamin. It's not just that. There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of opportunities to improve the quality of antenatal care for women everywhere. And so to move the agenda forward, to make a difference, it's really important that stakeholders support and learn from one another. But how can we best do that? And ideally, we'll learn from each other and share our tools and resources and best practices for introducing MMS in each country. And hopefully together, we'll make the movement move faster and ensure positive pregnancy experiences around the world. So without further ado, let me turn it over to today's speakers.
All right, thank you, Emily. So up next, we will hear from Dr. John Atwater of AtAqua Regulatory Services and Dr. Clayton Agello of Vitamin Angels. Dr. Atwater is the founder of AtAqua Regulatory Services and the former senior director at US Pharmacopoeia. He has over 25 years of experience in analytical chemistry, quality assurance program development, and drug development project management. Dr. Agello, his co-presenter, is the senior technical advisor at Vitamin Angels. He is an epidemiologist, entrepreneur, and executive who has collaborated with experts in 30 plus countries. He provides evidence-based strategic and operational advice to nonprofit organizations. Dr. Atwater and Dr. Agello will explain the UNIMAP MMS quality standards and provide an overview of how quality is determined. They will also present the expert consensus document as a resource for country-level decision makers to ensure consistency and quality of the MMS product. Over to you, Clayton and John.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And good day, everyone. In this session, Clayton and I want to answer some questions about producing an affordable, high-quality UNIMAP MMS product. Next slide, please. Next slide. So what is the expert consensus open access UNIMAP MMS product specification, and why is it needed? Can't a purchaser just provide a UNIMAP MMS formula to local manufacturer to produce the product? UNIMAP MMS stands for United Nations International Multiple Micronutrient Antenatal Preparation Multiple Micronutrient Supplement, which is a mouthful, which is why we abbreviate it. The Expert Consensus UNIMAP MMS product specification is a document that contains important information needed to manufacture the product. It is open access, which means that it's publicly available to any purchaser or manufacturer of the UNIMAP MMS product. Ordinarily, a product specification is a manufacturer's proprietary document that's not shared without cost to purchasers of the product. Without an open access product specification, any purchaser who approaches a manufacturer to purchase UNIMAP MMS product will be told by the manufacturer that they will have to create this document. And creating this is creating a new product document specification adds a significant amount of time to the timeline for developing the product, for manufacturing, packaging, and labeling it, for testing it, and ultimately for building manufacturing capacity. Next slide, please. There are three primary reasons to use the open access product specification. First, it's written to be used in any region of the world that accepts nutritional supplements to any of 5 internationally recognized pharmacopoeia standards and current good manufacturing practice regulations or guidelines. Secondly, for countries that may have the capacity to market and sell into regional marketplace, it helps manufacturers produce a product that is standardized in quality to drug-like standards, which will more likely support accelerated demand for the UNIMAP MMS product. And thirdly, as previously mentioned, it reduces the cost of manufacturing by providing essential details needed to produce the product. Next slide, please. Next slide. Another question that's often asked is, what is the difference between a nutritional supplement that is made to drug quality versus dietary supplement quality standards? Well, to answer this question, we first need to define drug quality and dietary supplement quality, because although there is a global consensus on how drug products should be manufactured, that is not the case for nutritional supplements. That's because some countries treat nutritional supplements as a food or dietary supplement, and others treat them as a drug product. The following slide provides a schematic diagram of the manufacturing process for a nutritional supplement, showing the inputs into the manufacturing process that includes ingredients, packaging materials, and labels, the manufacturing process or activities, and the final output or the finished product, which in our case is a multiple micronutrient tablet. Secondly, we need to understand that quality requirements for the manufacture of drugs, dietary supplements, and even foods are controlled by two things: good manufacturing practices, often referred to simply as GMPs, and also product quality standards, or more specifically, pharmacopeal and or compendial standards. As indicated at the bottom of the slide under the manufacturing processes or activities, GMP-related activities are highlighted in green text and product pharmacopeal quality standards in purple. Now, GMPs are based on the principle that quality should be built into the product, and testing alone cannot be relied on to ensure product quality. All GMPs have basic requirements for the methods, facilities, and controls used in the manufacture of a nutritional supplement. However, drug GMPs are more rigorous than food GMPs. Product quality standards exist for both drugs, dietary supplements, and foods. Drug product and dietary supplement standards are addressed by pharmacopeal standards such as the United States Pharmacopoeia, the European Pharmacopoeia, and the International Pharmacopoeia. Food quality compendial standards are published in Codex Alimentarius and in the Food Chemical Codex, or FCC. Pharmacopeal standards tend to focus on the purity of the ingredients, whereas food quality standards tend to focus on the absence of impurities, especially microbial contaminants. So as long as manufacturers are adhering to the appropriate drug-like GMPs and pharmacopeal standards, the quality of a nutritional supplement would be that of a drug product. Next slide, please. On this last slide, I've listed the points that I just spoke to you about for your future reference. And if you have more interest in this topic, you can find several articles about understanding product quality as applied to the UNIMAP MMS product, and a copy of the Expert Consensus Open Access UNIMAP MMS specification at references that will be given to you at the end of this presentation. And now I would like to pass the microphone on over to Clayton to answer a few more questions for us about producing an affordable, high-quality UNIMAP MMS product.
Thanks, John. Our third question is how national officials can determine the feasibility of accomplishing procurement from local manufacturers of UNIMAP MMS. The feasibility of transitioning from import of UNIMAP MMS to procurement from local manufacturers requires an examination of many issues. One approach that organizes this type of an examination is recommended and applied by Sight and Life. It's a 5-step situational analysis that's shown in the diagram at the bottom of the slide. It comprises an examination of local informational resources, market dynamics, production capacity, regulatory requirements. This is then all combined with testing of samples of existing multiple micronutrient products that are in the marketplace to determine if manufacturers of existing products conform to label claims. And of course, this is a reflection of product quality. This approach is described in more detail elsewhere in this symposium. Our next question is, if it's feasible, how long does it take to achieve local manufacturing of a UNIMAP MMS product? Well, there are several variables that affect the timeline. For example, what is the manufacturer's experience with nutritional supplement manufacturing? What's the nature of the manufacturer's product development cycle, and what is their starting point in the product development? Is it the open access product specification that was referred to by John earlier in this session? Or is the manufacturer creating the product specification anew? What local regulatory requirements affect the time needed for product development? For example, fulfilling a stability testing requirement to document a shelf life claim is one requirement among many that has a significant impact on the time to deliver a finished product. Another variable is whether the manufacturer is working from a purchase order or the promise of a purchase. Not unsurprisingly, manufacturers are more responsive when working against a purchase order, especially when upfront investment is required by the manufacturer for product development. Finally, the type of order can affect the time to delivery too. Is this a recurring commercial purchase, or is it a specialty run to support a clinical trial or some other limited use? The bottom line is that based on historical experience, it takes a new manufacturer to manufacture the UNIMAP MMS product approximately 2 to 3 years to deliver an approved product into the marketplace. And that, of course, is not including the time for implementing governmental procurement processes. Our last question is, what should UNIMAP MMS cost for national public sector programs? The absolute price of the product is important to ministries of finance, which allocate limited funds across budget requests from multiple ministries. By contrast, ministries of health tend to be more interested in cost-benefit analysis when adding a new intervention. Cost-benefit of MMS is discussed elsewhere in this symposium, and for the moment, I'd like to just stick with pricing. Ideally, the price of UNIMAP MMS should approximate the cost of the supplement that it replaces, an iron and folic acid supplement. Market research suggests that the price of IFAS, manufactured to internationally recognized quality standards, is at least 1 US cent per dose. The current list price for UNIMAP MMS from 2 global manufacturers, as shown in the diagram at the right, excluding freight and taxes, is about 1.1 to 1.2 US cents per dose for large tiered volume orders of 5 or 3 million bottles, respectively, and that would serve 5 or 3 million pregnancies, and about 1.4 cents per dose for minimum volume orders starting at 100,000 bottles. However, it's important to recognize that manufacturers face several challenges that will make it difficult for them to match global marketplace pricing. There are at least 3 that we can mention here. First is that most local manufacturers have limited production capacity that limits volume discounting. Secondly, where local manufacturers have volume capacity, few countries have 3 million or more pregnancies per year in a single domestic market, which is the volume that's needed to enable the best volume discounting, and import taxes on product ingredient are a significant cost factor of production. As we close this session, all of the resources and tools mentioned throughout the presentation are shown on the remaining slides with links to each document. We're confident that if you examine the resources and tools identified here, many of your additional questions will likely be answered. And finally, we do invite you to download this presentation from the conference website and to visit the websites of both Aqua Regulatory Services and Vitamin Angels. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton and John, for your informative presentation. Now we will hear from my colleague, Kalpana Bisabatoni, the Global Lead for Technology and Entrepreneurship at Sight and Life. Kalpana focuses on food systems in Asia, Sub-Saharan and Latin America, designing and advancing social business models and product innovations, including MMS. She has led the first of its kind 12-country analysis of local procurement and production of prenatal supplements, which was published in 2017. Kalpana will present the Supply Readiness Toolkit, an important resource which can help countries determine sustainable strategies for MMS introduction. Over to you, Kalpana.
Hello, everyone. As policy leaders weigh the health benefits of MMS during pregnancy, large-scale programs must address several upstream processes for delivery and scale-up. Considerations related to the local procurement of MMS are crucial to guarantee a stable, affordable, and high-quality supply of MMS. Today, I will walk you through the key elements of the tool we developed for supply readiness and has been tested or used in more than 15 countries. The objectives of this toolkit is to determine whether MMS would be needed to be imported or produced in the country, assess in-country capacity to procure or produce locally, provide guidance for competitive, high quality and affordable sources of supply, and finally, to assess the impact of shifting from import to local production. This tool is structured in 4 domains. We start with the desk research to inform the approach and directions for a market, production, regulation, and policy assessment. I will shortly describe each domain. In the next version of the tool, we've added a new element and procedures on how to test the quality of MMS products you would find in the market. We will release this new version early next year. When planned well, one should be able to complete examining each domain in 2 to 3 weeks. Skills needed. And the types of skills one would need are general research and analytical abilities, good communication for interviews, and basic statistical analysis. Some exposure to market and manufacturing environments could be useful, but it's not essential. So the first step is to do desk research. Start with literature review. We now have a number of publications where this tool has been used in our MMS special report. Try to obtain data on supplement sales for your country or region from the publicly available database UNIDO, which is United Nations International Trade Statistics Database, and the IMS Health Database. This will give you an idea of whether your country largely imports supplements or not. We have a detailed questionnaire in the special report. See if you can find answers from desk research to these questions. And any gaps in information can be added to the primary interviews you will conduct in the next phase. Step 2 is market assessment. In this phase, you will be collecting products from your region and benchmark them against the recommended UNIMAP formulation. Here, it would be useful to apply the 4P framework. Product, what is the variety and quality of products that you find in the market? Their prices, how are they being promoted? And place, which are channels where you find the supplements. And explore all types of channels, whether it's brick and mortar stores, such as pharmacies, e-commerce, such as the ones on Amazon, and direct sales to consumers or by healthcare practitioners. Try to take pictures of the labels in the pharmacies you visit, and make sure you include a good mix or a range of pharmacies, public, private, online, low, middle, and high income neighborhoods. For example, here you find on the bottom left corner, Jan Aushadhi is a public pharmacy that you will find in low income neighborhoods. And by taking the pictures of the labels, you will be able to compare it to the UNIMAP formulation. You would then categorize these supplements into 4 non-overlapping categories and then review their labels, preferably in an Excel sheet. You would then compare these collected products to the UNIMAP formulation. You can also run descriptive statistics and triangulate findings from desk research. Once you complete step 2, you'll be able to determine the affordability and local manufacturing capacity in your country, whether local products are better than the imported ones, and if budget permits, I would strongly recommend to plan a laboratory analysis to determine whether the vitamins and minerals in the supplements that you see in the market support the label claims. The next step is production assessment. To support local, in-country, or regional procurement and production of MMS, 4 scenarios are possible. Scenario A, in which you import liquid or dry forms of straight ingredients and then convert them into tablets or capsules and packaged by a local manufacturer. Scenario B, here you import a premix of vitamins and minerals and then tablet them locally. Scenario C is where you import a bulk finished product, which are tablets and capsules of MMS that is packaged and branded locally. And finally, scenario D, where you import a branded, packaged, finished product. Here, you would get a lot of insights and findings by interviewing a range of companies, small, medium, and large local or regional companies, but also multinational companies. Try to meet as many experts as you can in senior management, regulatory functions, research and development, and business development functions. And by talking to these experts, you'll be able to identify the barriers and opportunities for MMS uptake or product procurement or production in the country, and incentives and disincentives for each of these manufacturers for each of the 4 production scenarios. And once the interviews are done, you will be able to develop a roadmap on the conditions that need to be in place for local production of MMS. For example, scenarios A and B are found in countries that have thriving branded supplements or pharmaceutical industries, such as in Bangladesh, Indonesia, Colombia, and Peru. Whereas in most low-income countries, scenarios C and D are preferred as both production capacity and the potential consumer demand are low. Now we come to the final stage, which is the regulation and policy assessment. It typically takes more time than the previous stages. Try to interview as many experts as you can across public and private sectors, but also regulatory bodies. You will be able to identify several upstream policies which would enable local production. But at the same time, try to explore steps to have MMS on your country's essential medicines list, the EML. As a result, having MMS on the EML has a lot of advantages. MMS will be given public health importance. The government will prioritize resources for shaping market supply and demand. but will also enable easier clearances of supplies at the port, government storage at central medical stores, and government-led distribution and logistics, which would help or enable your pilot or program. Further, national governments need to consider downstream or consumer-friendly policies, but also upstream, which are manufacturer-friendly policies, in order to achieve policy coherence. During this assessment, you could, when you speak to various experts, explore downstream policies, which could include subsidies, for example, vouchers that we see in the US for supplements, or free access through clinics. Upstream policies improve affordability through competitive and sustainable price ceilings, as we find them in India. Import subsidies or tax exemptions on supplements, as we see in Bangladesh and Peru, which have zero taxes for local MMS producers. In conclusion, with this tool, you will be able to recommend the preferred production scenario or recommend a mix of scenarios, be able to come to a conclusion on the availability and affordability of MMS in the markets, identify gaps and opportunities and investment required for local supply of MMS, assess the capabilities of local manufacturers, and finally, the regulation and policies required to support the shift from IFA to MMS. So please use the tool, refer to our findings from more than 15 countries using this toolkit, critique it, send us your feedback. We need collective action to be able to make MMS affordable for every pregnant woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalpana. Thanks for sharing this important resource with us today. Now, next up, we'll hear from Jennifer Bush-Hallen of Nutrition International. Jenny joined Nutrition International in 2015 and is the Senior Technical Advisor for Maternal and Neonatal Health and Nutrition. She will discuss an evidence-based case for switching to MMS, including the use of NI's cost-effectiveness tool, which highlights benefits on a country-by-country basis. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today on the cost-effectiveness of multiple micronutrient supplements, or MMS, during pregnancy. My name is Jennifer Bush-Hallen, and I'm the Senior Technical Advisor for Maternal and Neonatal Health and Nutrition at Nutrition International. Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to share with you NI's support in generating cost-effectiveness evidence on MMS and translating this evidence into tools and actions for decision makers at country level. An outline of the presentation is shown here on the slide in the form of a timeline. I'll briefly walk you through the timeline, but as we go through the presentation, there'll be more details on each of the points. Firstly, let's start with the left-hand side and wind back the clock to about 2016, when WHO released the ANC guidelines for a positive pregnancy. At the time, MMS was not recommended, but the guidelines did encourage countries to consider MMS when there was known micronutrient deficiencies in their populations. However, at the time, there was no evidence on the cost-effectiveness of moving from IFA to MMS. Yet countries were asking the question, is MMS better value for money than IFA? So in 2017, NI, together with Limestone Analytics, developed methodology and conducted cost-effective analysis for 3 countries, as you see noted on the left-hand side of the slide. This was published in 2019. And I then used this methodology to support countries at the time that were considering implementation research. These countries were Tanzania, Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, and Madagascar. And this implementation research was supported by UNICEF and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Moving into the middle of the timeline, in September 2019, NI committed to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Goalkeepers Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies Accelerator. This accelerator aimed to advance and introduce MMS over the next 3 years. NI's commitment, one of them, was to finalize the MMS cost-benefit tool, make it publicly available and free online. In November 2019, NI was also asked by WHO to conduct additional cost-effective analysis using the WHO sub-analysis to help support the MMS guideline review process. This evidence helped influence the WHO update on MMS. And as we all know now, these guidelines were released in July 2020. And the recommendation on MMS during pregnancy changed from not recommended to recommended in the context of rigorous implementation research. So going back a little bit on the evidence, as I mentioned in 2016, there was a gap in the evidence on cost effectiveness on MMS compared to IFA. In 2019, 2 studies, as shown here on the slide, were published, each complementing each other. And both studies showed that MMS is cost-effective compared to IFA in the countries studied. The countries being Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and Burkina Faso. A little bit more on the evidence. As I mentioned, as I mentioned on the timeline, NI and Limestone Analytics conducted additional cost-effective analysis to support the WHO guideline review process. We used the statistically significant estimates of low birth weight and small for gestational age from the WHO sub-analysis. And the results showed in all cases, MMS remained very cost-effective in all scenarios across all 12 countries. The results of this work can be found in the report that's shown on the slide and now available on the NI website with the link at the bottom of this slide. So why did NI develop the MMS cost benefit tool? And as I mentioned, it really was to help countries answer the question, is MMS better value for money than IFA? The tool has the capacity to estimate the impact of MMS compared to IFA supplementation for all significant health outcomes, budget impact, cost effectiveness, and the return on investment. And on this slide, you see a screenshot of what you would see if you went onto our NI website where the tool is hosted. What is the tool? We need a lot more time than the 10 minutes of this presentation, but you can find it on our website. It is quite unique and it's very user-friendly. And as I mentioned, it's free and online. It is driven by the evidence, but it is very rapid in generating the results. It's timely to have this tool because this is a question that many countries are asking. And now with the new updated WHO guidelines to encourage countries to really move to implementation research, this tool can answer many questions. It is dynamic because it's interactive. Countries can, already we have pre-uploaded countries, but you can also enter, new countries can enter their own data and generate their results. More information on the tool and the methodology is actually can be found in a session, an on-demand session in this conference titled Cost Effectiveness and Cost Benefit of Delivering Nutrition and Health Interventions. And if you look for the presentation by Dr. Dylan Waters, Director of Health Economics, you'll find out more information on the methodology of the tool. But I am pleased to share with you today that we now have available results for 32 countries uploaded in the tool on the NI website. All 32 countries have available to them cost-effective analysis results alongside policy briefs for each of the countries. And as you see in the box here, you see the actual name of each of the countries that are now in the tool. And doing all the analysis for the 32 countries, we found in all cases, the findings show with high certainty that MMS is very cost effective for the 32 countries. As I mentioned, other countries can do their own custom analysis by entering in their nutrition and health data and running the tool to also answer the same question, is MMS better value for money than IFA? In terms of application of the tool, and what is very relevant right now is in relation to implementation research. As we noted, MMS is now recommended for pregnancy in the context of rigorous implementation research. It is important to note that the tool is able to answer a number of questions related to implementation research. And as countries embark on deciding their questions, they should consider what the tool is capable of answering. Examples of some of the questions that may come up in implementation research that the tool has the ability to answer are, if the coverage of IFA in my country is low, is it still cost effective to introduce MMS? If my government uses locally produced MMS with a different cost, is it still cost effective? If my country's low birth weight prevalence changes, would it still be cost effective? If my government requests cost benefit for 2, 5, or 10 years of MMS, can I decide whether it's cost effective? The tool right now has the capacity to answer all these questions for your country. So if you would like to learn more about the tool beyond this presentation, which is really just a flavor of what the tool is and what it can do, and answer cost-effective analysis questions for your countries, I encourage you to join us in the Learning Lab on micronutrient supplementation cost-benefit tool on November 17. In this Learning Lab, participants will learn how to run the MMS cost-benefit tool from start to finish and answer that question for your own country. Is MMS better value for money than IFA? Participants will access the cost-effective analysis for the 32 countries that are already in the tool that span the globe. They'll learn how to customize analysis to suit their own situation and learn how to modify some of the inputs such as population, supplement costs and coverage. And even you can look at how to add new countries. There will be case studies to demonstrate how to interpret the results, use this information to support implementation research, and showcase the other available knowledge products. So if you can, please join us. Now, even though on the slide it says November 16, we just got confirmation it's November 17. But if you would like to learn more right now, please visit our website and you will see the tool. And in that website, you see a user guide and a stepwise guide to taking you through the tool. And then you'll also see the policy briefs that are available on our website already generated. And as I mentioned, that's 32 of them. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. And I look forward to connecting with many more of you during the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was a very interesting presentation. Now, next, we will hear from Dr. Stephen Kodish of Penn State University. Dr. Kodish is an assistant professor of biobehavioral health and nutritional sciences in the College of Health and Human Development, and his expertise centers on understanding the factors contributing to malnutrition among vulnerable populations. His presentation will address improving MMS uptake and adherence through formative research, and he will be drawing insights from a joint partnership with Sight and Life and UNICEF in 4 countries. Over to you, Steve.
Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for that really nice introduction. As the speaker mentioned, I'm here to talk a little bit about our social and behavior change toolkit that we're developing in collaboration with Sight and Life and UNICEF and local partners to introduce MMS appropriately. When we think back to iron and folic acid, although certainly a good nutritional product on paper, it's faced a lot of implementation related challenges. And now that we have multiple micronutrient supplementation that is more efficacious for improving maternal nutrition and improved birth outcomes, we want to, or we've been trying to strategize how can we avoid the same fate that IFA has seen. And one way is to develop a social marketing strategy when we introduce MMS, and the social marketing strategy or the social marketing framework usually takes the 4 Ps approach. First, focused on the product. So how can we change some of those product related characteristics to make it more acceptable to community members? Number 2, how can we modify, if at all, the price? And that might mean the actual cost, but it also might refer to opportunity costs, such as traveling to a health center to pick up a product. The 3rd P refers to the promotional aspect of the product. How can we develop and tailor communication channels? What audience segment should we reach so that MMS can be promoted appropriately? And finally, how do we place this product within any nutrition program? How we place it in Burkina Faso might be different than how we place it in Madagascar, for instance. And so understanding whether a community or a facility-based approach is appropriate for a given context, or what combination thereof is one key aspect we think that will be important for promoting MMS, so that it, again, doesn't face that same fate that IFA has with low coverage and suboptimal compliance globally. So to do so, what we're trying to do is really help country offices through three main pillars. And the first, I refer to as an aim here, is really to identify those product-related factors that will make MMS more, give it some more value. Number two is to how do we generate these culturally appropriate promotional strategies, and not just culturally acceptable, but culturally appropriate, so that they resonate with community members and there's value that we have provided on top of the nutritional adequacy of the product. And then number three, what are the modifiable factors through formative work that we can change to create an enabling environment for optimal behavior change? And so we're developing this toolkit to be used globally that draws from rapid assessment procedures, sometimes referred to as focused ethnographic study designs. And they take a number of different research methods, largely qualitative and ethnographic, that are meant to be conducted over long periods of time, in the past by anthropologists for months and months and even years, and boiling them down into a systematic approach that can be conducted in the context of programs where timelines are tight and resources are sometimes limited. So we're developing this global guidance with partners in 4 different country contexts, where we're introducing the MMS as part of the demonstration pilot. And right now we're in the process of drafting and getting feedback on the guidance manual that we've developed, so that it can be better and more useful moving forward as a global toolkit. And I'll take you through the 3 phases of that toolkit very quickly. But the first phase, we've included market observations, product design, community workshops, as well as focus groups, to be the first pillar that will inform our social marketing strategy. And we start with the first research question, which is, what are other locally available nutrition products in use and being preferred by people in market X or market Y? Here are a couple of different pictures from Bangladesh and Tanzania and Madagascar, where we've already found similar types of products on the market, and we're trying to draw out what are the most preferred aspects of these products to inform the current strategies in the demonstration pilots in these settings. Number 2, we're interested in those product-related factors. So for a lot of specialized nutritious foods like MMS, we have the opportunity to modify the box, to modify the logo, sometimes to develop culturally appropriate or locally contextualized name. And let me just go back here. Here are a couple of samples that we designed with UNICEF graphic designer at headquarters as samples that we're taking to the field right now to solicit feedback in the 4 different country contexts. We're also interested in, what are those social norms around prenatal supplementation, not just around MMS, but around foods and supplementation during this important life stage. We'll take those findings and, in an iterative approach, use those to inform phase 2 data collection, which really dives more into the ethnographic analysis. And so we've built in a couple of simple activities or research methods drawing from cognitive anthropology. And free lists and pile sorts are 2 such methods. They allow us to first understand items within a cultural domain. And so for instances of this, or for this project in particular, we're interested in identifying health and nutrition terms that are local to each context and that can be used for promotional purposes when we promote MMS. We're also interested to learn about the level of risk perception towards nutrition-related illnesses. What we as nutritionists think is important is not always the same as what community members think is important. And that's quite important when it comes to social and behavior change. And then finally, phase 2 should give us really the tenets to inform a social behavior change strategy. And that includes communication channels, audience segments, and then tailored messages that can be used to promote the MMS for positive maternal nutrition and improved health outcomes. So these 6 methods are put together in a strategic way that they can be completed in just 2-month time period. And for most programs, we think that's an adequate amount of time that will yield useful information, but at the same time be practical enough to be completed in the field. Then we build in some time where we can develop and take those findings and develop strategies that will be used in a subsequent household feeding trial. And we call this phase 3, which is our household trial of improved practices. And for those of you familiar with public health behavioral interventions, a TIPS, as it's called, is sometimes used before scaling up a behavioral intervention. And in doing so, in this small scale trial of improved practices, we can figure out what are the barriers and facilitating factors to that consistent supply and demand and compliance with MMS before investment into district level, regional level, or even national type of programming. And if you look at our overall research timeline here to develop SBCC, it's really not too long. We hope it's manageable. And really this toolkit should be used, or it's being developed so that it can be used by practitioners on the ground, not by big research institutions or universities. So in summary, our toolkit's drawing from rapid assessment procedure approaches or focused ethnographic studies. And there are a number of these out there already. If you look on the left side of this slide around different types of public health behaviors. And we're crafting ours with partners to try to specifically develop a social marketing strategy for MMS. And if we have a nice social marketing strategy for MMS in any given context, we expect greater demand, we'd expect higher compliance, and then most importantly, improved maternal nutrition and birth outcomes. This is a toolkit that's in progress right now, and I'm happy to talk about it at length and provide some different examples about findings that we're getting from the field already in Burkina Faso and in Madagascar and Tanzania and in Bangladesh. So thank you first and foremost to our study participants, as well as to our formative research partners on the ground helping us carry out this field work during COVID. Of course, our government counterparts and our UNICEF colleagues at headquarters and country offices are invaluable in this process of toolkit development and formative research. And then thank you again to Site and Life team and the Penn State team of both strategic and technical partners who are helping with data analysis and helping take those findings to inform this toolkit, which we hope will be useful to the global community. Thank you. Dr. Anuraj Shankar is with the Center for Tropical Medicine and Global Health at Oxford University and the Eichmann Oxford Clinical Research Unit in Jakarta, Indonesia. He completed his doctorate in immunology at Harvard University and has carried out extensive research on maternal health and nutrition and is a co-founder of the Open SRP digital health platform. He will be presenting on Indonesia's use of the Open SRP tool to track MMS uptake and adherence.
Thank you, Steve, for that very nice introduction. I'm here today representing the Summit Institute of Development and presenting also on behalf of my colleague, Ms. Anissa Dwi Utami. The talk today is going to be about advancing maternal micronutrient supplementation with digital health tools. And I'm going to present to you a case study with Open SRP, Open Smart Register platform, and how in Indonesia, the Summit Institute has been able to explore tracking maternal multiple micronutrient supplementation in the context of maternal health. Just a very quick introduction to the Summit Institute of Development. Their vision is to improve public health and human development. They're located in Indonesia on Lombok Island, which some of you may know is the island right next to Bali. Their mission is improving maternal and neonatal health, focusing on information and communication technology, and improving human resources. Some of the key accomplishments of the Summit Institute of Development, they had conducted the first large-scale trial of multiple micronutrient supplementation. In fact, and this was one of the trials that facilitated the recent WHO global recommendation for multiple micronutrient supplementation. Later in 2015, Summit Institute of Development was a co-founder of the Open Smart Register platform, which is this open source digital health tool for frontline workers. And I'm going to be speaking with you more about that today. And in 2017, they actually carried out the largest, most detailed study of child cognition, which showed really a very interesting finding that, in fact, nurture is much more important than nature with respect to child cognitive development. So that was a very important finding. And they've been very busy, unfortunately, in 2020. They are a founding partner, in fact, of the largest COVID-19 lab in Indonesia. I just want to highlight here some of the partnerships involved in this work I'm going to be presenting to you today. SID works with multiple people within Indonesia, organizations internationally as well, and several different donor groups support them. So let me give you first an introduction to this Open Smart Register platform, OpenSRP as it's called. It's a integrated digital health information system for frontline health workers. You can go to smartregister.org to learn more about this. This was actually launched as an initiative to create an open source tool for frontline health workers in collaboration with World Health Organization, ONA Systems, Johns Hopkins, myself, Summit Institute of Development, IRD in Pakistan, and Empower in Bangladesh. This really group of people was focused on creating this new type of platform. And amazingly, in 3 or 4 years, became very successful. Some of the key features of OpenSRP in Indonesia, it really supports the workflow of the frontline health worker. In the case of Indonesia, focusing on midwives who provide antenatal care, delivery, and postnatal care, vaccinators, and nutritionists. Some of the features include integration with chatbots, advanced analytics, in-app reporting, so it works as a job aid, the ability to acquire information from, let's say, a blood pressure cuff. So it's quite an integrated system. So as a starting point of really why this OpenSRP is important, I wanted to highlight really in many countries the current status of maternal care. And it's what we refer to as being provider-centered care. So here in this diagram, you can see, for example, in Indonesia, if you have the pregnant woman here, in fact, during her care, she may need to seek out and work with persons at the community health center, village health post, maybe persons providing community outreach for antenatal care for her, including persons at the birth center, and her child may be visited by a person from the Early Childhood Development Center, or she may have to go there. So there's at least 5, sometimes more different persons or contact points that are required. And it's really up to her to go and seek these different individuals and facilities who are not necessarily coordinating their work between them. So what we decided to do with OpenSRP, and a bit of this complicated diagram here, is we decided that all these different health workers and the information they collect, in fact, can be integrated and networked together. And we could create this OpenSRP network system of providers. So in this diagram, you can see here the midwife. She has several different information registers she keeps. Here on the right, you can see the vaccinator, an early childhood development worker on the lower left, and a nutritionist. So all these different workers with OpenSRP apps are able to integrate their information and their care. This leads to this system that we refer to as the OpenSRP ecosystem of care, which is actually a client-centered approach. And this enables you to maintain really the continuity of care of the pregnant woman throughout the pregnancy and the delivery with different workers, and afterwards track the delivery of the child and provide the proper care for the child. So it's in this region here of the pregnancy that the integration with multiple micronutrient supplementation can become important. So what about this antenatal care and open SRP? Well, here we see some evidence of a deployment of open SRP over a 1-year period with midwives showing this improvement in coverage in antenatal care. And this actually led to an increased compliance with iron folic acid supplementation and what you might expect actually to see with multiple micronutrient supplementation. In further follow-up of this particular work, we could see here that in fact, as a result of deployment of open SRP and increased consumption of nutrient supplements during pregnancy, there was a reduction in maternal anemia. In addition to that, we can see very clearly in another area, this matched pair deployment, again, increase in antenatal care, increase particularly in postnatal care, and actually a reduction in mortality. So it's very clear that such systems can lead to improvements of care, can be very useful for tracking multiple micronutrient supplementation and utilization. So the next steps really for open SRP and integrating with multiple micronutrient supplementation programs relates to this work that we're doing now, where essentially taking the WHO recommendation for antenatal care, including the most recent change related to multiple micronutrient supplementation, and integrating that into this digital tool that is a companion to those written guidelines, and focusing specifically on the aspect of it related to maternal nutrition and introducing an additional screen for tracking and recommendation related to the prescribing of multiple micronutrient supplementation, including screens to assess the adherence. So this leads us to really the next aspect of this work is it's great you can integrate multiple micronutrient supplements, track that, promote that, but what is the supplement really that would be the most interesting? So this is work that Summit Institute of Development has launched that they refer to as the Global Nutrition Development Initiative, GND, or in short, they call it the GND program. And in GND, they've developed a chatbot. And what this chatbot does, it reaches out to pregnant women or women of reproductive age, and it's able to ask them that if they were to consume a multiple micronutrient supplement, what are the specifications of the design of that? Not the composition, but the design. For instance, the packaging, the appearance, tablet versus capsule, and so forth. So through interaction with them, through this chatbot, this information can be gathered. And this is just a screenshot showing how the GND introduces itself, what GND stands for, and what Summit Institute is, and so forth. But then it starts to present a series of questions to the woman, asking her to talk about what she prefers in terms of the design of the supplement. And you can answer these sorts of questions as a result of this real-time data coming in through GND. Did the woman prefer the supplement in either a bottle or a blister pack? Here you can see that somewhat similar. However, the bottle is a little bit more disliked for various reasons, but not too much different. And how many per package? So you can see here, this is quite interesting, that 180 tablets or supplements per pack is not a well-liked type of distribution format. Really, 30 per pack is something more the women prefer for various reasons. In addition to that, this issue in Indonesia is very important, that the supplement being halal. And so here we see 2/3 of the women saying this, they agree strongly that this halal issue is extremely important. So if one were to design a supplement that women would want to consume in Indonesia, you would have to take into account these characteristics and several of the others that I've not mentioned it to you. And there are, in fact, a myriad number of options for maternal micronutrient supplementation in Indonesia. So what we were interested in was actually assessing how these supplements are adhering to the GND preference index for supplements to be consumed by the population. So we were able to go through, do a ranking of these supplements, their appearance and so forth, and develop this preference index. So here you see on the x-axis this preference index. On the y-axis, I show you the cost per 100 supplements. And then as a bubble plot, the size of the bubble is indicative of what we calculate as the predicted utilization. So this is a model data analysis. And interestingly enough, what you can see is that, in fact, supplements that are the cheapest are not necessarily the ones that you might expect to have better predicted utilization. If you go up to a higher preference index, sort of in the intermediate area, with some increase in cost, this actually leads to a substantially larger predicted utilization index. And as you get up to very highly preferred supplements, but with a high price, you can see the utilization, predicted utilization is also not so high. So what does this mean? This means really with respect to multiple micronutrient supplement design, a better supplement will lead to better impact, and a lower cost supplement may not actually be the best option. So currently, the Summit Institute of Development is working with multiple partners to do a project known as the Advanced Network for Care at Scale, and this relates to scaling up of open SRP and multiple micronutrient supplementation to over 20 districts, 15 million persons, assessing the impact of this as a stepwise randomized trial in a programmatic context, integrating it with national health insurance and strengthening the frontline workforce. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much, and to emphasize that I think one of the key take-homes from this presentation is that digital tools and product design can optimize maternal multiple micronutrient supplementation scale-up and impact. So thank you for your time.
So thank you so much for sharing with us today. And before I hand over to our final speaker today, I would once again like to encourage all of you to visit the MMS topics page on the Connected Conference website. Among many other resources, there you will find a special report focusing on MMS in pregnancy, which was launched by Sight and Life in April of this year. Each of our presenters have contributed to this report, and you can read about all the evidence, country experiences, and resources in greater detail. And that brings me to our final speaker, Dr. Saskia Ozendarp, Executive Director of the Micronutrient Forum. Dr. Ozendarp has authored more than 50 peer-reviewed publications, scientific publications, and book chapters, and has led cross-functional research teams on innovative products through public-private partnerships. Dr. Ozendarp will deliver closing remarks and her final reflections. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to deliver the closing remarks of this exciting symposium. So the potential of multiple micronutrient supplements, or MMS, within a framework of antenatal care is huge. And these arguments are supported by evidence on the enhanced birth outcomes and of the cost-benefit analysis. And the tools that today's presenters spoke to help to eliminate a path forward for country-led MMS programs, highlighting context-specific resources and key considerations to better ensure the sustainability of MMS as an intervention. This work is truly impressive, and I'm eager to see these tools continue to be put to use in new contexts and additional geographies, so that more women and babies are better equipped to get the nutrition they need. So as we celebrate these developments, however, it is also critical that we take on barriers to implementation and adherence right from the start. We know that some global manufacturers can and are producing MMS at cost parity with IFA. And we also know that local manufacturers may struggle to meet these price points without volume guarantees, increased capabilities and capacity, and without stronger relationships with vendors to source raw materials from. So this means we need new alliances, and we need support to support the development of robust supply pipelines and engaging manufacturers around the world. Additionally, this intervention, like any intervention, is only as good as its implementation. So how do we realize the potential of it? How can we convince women to take these supplements for 6 months every day? And we have seen with IFA how challenging that can be. So as MMS programs are developed, we can learn from IFA programs and take these lessons to work to overcome the barriers that led to low adherence in IFA programs in many countries. We must also focus on implementation research to further inform how to best deliver MMS. In addition, this research should put women at its center to encourage behavior changes that motivate them to take MMS every day. So the introduction of MMS also offers an opportunity to strengthen antenatal care systems and to build capacity of frontline workers, as has been demonstrated by Dr. Utami's presentation. Throughout this session, we have seen that collaboration and coordinated action are critical in overcoming challenges to effective MMS implementation. Collaboration is needed at all levels, between global and country experts, between private and public sector, and between policy decision makers and program officers. We need one global agenda for MMS introduction and implementation, and we need to speak with one voice and work even better together if we wish this intervention to live up to its real potential. So I look forward to continuing the advancement of MMS, along with many of you and along with each of the men and women who presented here today. Finally, I would like to thank the sponsor of this symposium, Kirk Humanitarian, who has worked relentlessly over the past 18 years to support MMS. Thank you to the speakers, and thank you to Maddie, who brought this session together brilliantly. And thank you to all of you who watched this session and who participated in this session.